And good evening and welcome to the Icecast Live. My name is Shane Chebsey, and next to me, as always, faithfully, like a beautiful puppy, is Ollie, son of Germania McManee.
I'll take that. I'll take that all day long. How are you?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, you?
Very good, very good, very good this week. Sun's out. I've got that article in Once and Future number 25 that was out this week that I told you about King
Yeah.
Arthur. So I'm on top of the world.
Fantastic.
How are
I'm
you?
glad to hear it. I'm good, mate. Yeah, I've been busy as always, sending off Hedrick to the printers.
Yeah.
Getting ready for Comic Salopia.
Yeah.
We've just unveiled our poster art from Mike.
Very nice artwork as
Perkins, which was very nice. Yeah. It's just non-stop, to be honest, mate. It really is. But I'm really excited about everything that's happening, everything with Ice, everything with Comic Salopia, all the books that we're doing. You might have seen the little teaser image that I've put out for the new Scratch book, which is a Dracula book.
Yeah, I mean, that's
very
interesting.
About.
You've got Stoker working on that with you, haven't you?
I have. We have got a bona fide Stoker.
That makes it official and above board, doesn't it?
It does indeed. It does. It is an official Dracula book. And I'm very excited about it because I can't give too much away right now because we're going to be doing a show at the weekend, which is going to be an exclusive giveaway of some of the stuff that's happening.
Is this for Free Comic Book Day?
No, it's not. Although I am going to Forbidden Planet on Saturday with Mike in Wolverhampton.
And this is in Wolverhampton,
yeah. And we're going to be doing a Free Comic Book Day thing, which is going to be a good fun day, I think. They've got a new store at Wolverhampton, as I'm sure you're aware of. So it's a brand new store. They haven't just refit it. They've moved. They've done a new store, and I haven't been yet. So I'm really excited to see this new Forbidden Planet because, as you know, our good friend and often, host on here, Chris Ball, is the manager there. And he's a good friend of ours. And so it'll be a good chance to go and see him, spend some time with him, and pick up some free comics.
Nice.
What's better than free comics?
Nice. So
I'm looking forward to that. But tonight we have got two fantastic guests. They are the guys behind the new UK publisher, Wild River Comics. Now, I've been watching this little story unfold online for a while, and I've been really impressed with how they've presented themselves, how they've marketed their material. But now they have a Kickstarter ongoing, and pretty much straight away they bust their target, and they're well above their target now. They've got a new book coming out called Daughters of Albion, which looks really interesting. Now, I think it's an all ages book, but I will confirm that with the guests when they come on. So we've got Sammy and Dennis from the from the publishing house, and I'm really looking forward to talking to them. Have you seen much of their publicity, Ollie?
I've seen the artwork. I must admit they've got some pretty big stars contributing covers for them. I was very impressed by that lineup. So as a sort of first-time publisher, they're certainly marking their territory, so to speak. So definitely. I'm very pleased if I can get the screen to be shared. I may have to drop out of this conversation to restart Chrome, but it'd be really unfair if we couldn't share the amazing artwork with our viewers tonight.
We do. We need to be able to do that. Yeah, definitely, mate. So if you disappear for a minute, then I'll understand why.
Don't talk about me.
Why don't you say nice stuff anyway, So, okay then, mate. I'll play the VT. Well,
let's have it.
That. Welcome back to the Icecast Live, and welcome Sammy and Dennis.
Hello.
Hi Shane, how you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you so much, you guys, for coming onto the show.
Thanks for having us, honestly.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. So I'll start with you, Dennis, because I'm completely ignorant about Wild River Comics, I have no, other than what I've seen on online, I have seen some really cool stuff. But would you like to tell us, how Wild River Comics came about?
Yeah, so Trevor and I, who's not on this cast at the moment, he's the sales and marketing director at Wild River. But we've been friends for 30 years. We met at school, where we just loved comics, and always joked about one day writing and getting into comics, and sort of like being able to, I wanted to be an artist, and it kind of like sat there as a bit of a kid's pipe dream for 30 years, and then luckily last year, some changes in circumstances based on COVID and everything that was happening in the world. We were lucky enough to find an investor that kind of believed in our vision for a new comic book studio based in the UK.
Great.
With hopefully a very unique voice. We're not dabbling or interested in kind of following the big boys in Marvel and DC in terms of like the superhero genre. I think we love comics as a medium to be able to tell really unique stories, and it's such a unique medium that we decided that we wanted to open a comic book studio, create some interesting characters, create some interesting worlds, and we've been at it ever since. Really excited for the first book to be coming out this month. And with the Kickstarter, and then we've got a huge amount of stuff planned for expanding the IP, expanding the universe, new characters, new genres of books. I would say probably if you were kind of a fan of the Vertigo imprint, you would hopefully dig a lot of the stuff that we're doing.
Oh, that's interesting. Do you know, I wouldn't have clocked that from the material I've seen so far. But then again, the great thing about Vertigo was that it was so varied, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
You got all different types of genres, all different types of art styles. I mean, you sort of knew what you were going to get with Vertigo, but at the same time, you didn't. So that's really interesting. Would you say that some of those creators, that worked in Vertigo, were they people who influenced you then?
Definitely, yeah. I think obviously the big guns, Neil Gaiman and Alan Moore and people like that. I loved reading when I was younger, and I've always been into sort of like fantasy and myth and legend, and history. It's always really fascinated me. So to be able to base or pull from all these different threads, different writers that we loved reading, different sort of like artists that we love seeing their work, and the stories that they're writing, and that to me is really fascinating. And I'm hoping, I hope that basically the stories that we're creating draw all this stuff through and kind of like give you a different new sort of like take on Celtic and British mythology initially, drawing it into a kind of a new dystopian London, and with Wild River and with Daughters of Albion, the first book, I think what's quite unique is that it's set in London, but set on a much more street level London. So it's not the type of London that you see in Thor: The Dark World, for instance. It's much more street level. It's much more sort of like gritty and interesting. And Trevor and I grew up in London and around London, so we love London. We love the people here. We love the city, and we really wanted to do for it what Marvel did for New York in making it a character in the book. That these characters can only exist in London because of the way that London shapes and forms people and relationships, and the geography. And we wanted to make the books for Londoners to read it and feel that they know these people, they know someone very similar to that, and that they recognize the locations. And then again, obviously London registers really well around the world as a brand name. So people are fascinated by London, and we wanted to bring our London to them as well.
So even though this is an alternate London, it's people will still recognize it as theirs.
Yeah, 100%, absolutely. Matt Timpson, my artist, always hates the fact that I ask him to put the shard in everything.
It's like when people draw Paris and they always put,
yeah, exactly.
either the
Oh,
Louvre
yeah, you are
or,
in Paris.
Or
They always
the
put the
Eiffel
Black
Tower.
Tower in, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. And I joke and sort of saying it has to be in every panel. You can see the shard everywhere in London. But yeah, no, it will be really recognisable. I think I'm quite conscious about like doing all the touristy things. I'm not, like the London Eye and all that sort of stuff. It's been in all the comic books, all the movies. So I wanted to explore in the book different areas in London, and because London's so uniquely different in where depending on where you live and where you are, it's quite distinctive. And I really wanted to bring that flavour to the book to really show, so that you can genuinely believe that you're in London and not just taking references from tourist screenshots.
Yeah. And obviously, I could tell from the way you're talking, you love London. There's a lot of passion there. But Sammy, you're not a Londoner, are you? You're a Northerner.
I am not.
So
I'm not
how
a
did you
Londoner,
get
no.
involved in this project?
So it was last year I actually worked for Wild River as a promotional girl. So I've been sort of modelling and in the sort of performance and entertainment industry for a few years now. So I got booked to work at the convention for them, promoting the comic, trying to get people to sign up to the newsletter, sort of engaging with them. So I had to learn the story very quickly and use, some of the skills that I've picked up from day jobs and my industry level jobs over the years, and try and get different sorts of people to talk to us and learn about the comic. And over that weekend, somehow I managed to convince them that I was a good person and that I would be of benefit to the team. And now 6 months later, they can't really backtrack on that because my face is on everything. So they're stuck with me now.
I was going to say they stuck with you.
Yeah.
And so it's mostly a promotional role that you take still, or do you take a
Originally it was going to be
that?
that way, yeah, but I think with Wild River and with the sort of stage we're at now, everyone gets involved with everything. So my role mainly is community manager, so I'm responsible for finding things like this, creating the content for us, engaging via our messages and comments across all the social medias. We've got a discussion group that I manage as well. But then I'm also in charge of helping Trevor with certain aspects of Comic-Con. So I build the booth, find the promo teams, figure out what sort of prints or giveaways we're going to do, what's going to really get people's attention and want them to come and talk to us. But, one day I can be proofreading or, sort of casting an eye over a script for the next comic book. The next day we're ordering food to do food challenges. Every single day is so different and the role has grown so quickly, which I'm really happy about. But to work in such a team where everyone sort of clubs together is really amazing as well. Wild River is so different to anywhere I've ever worked before.
Oh, it sounds like a really good bunch of people, and I must say, from what I've seen, on all your marketing materials, you can see that there's a really nice sort of family feel to the team.
And like families, it's not always happy, but we always look after each other.
And you mentioned Matt, the artist. Now, I'm familiar with Matt's work. He's a really good artist, I have to say.
He's an incredible artist. Yeah.
We're
really lucky to have him. It was a few weeks of very, very persuasive chats to get him to come on board.
Oh, really? You had to twist his arm a little bit, did you?
I think he was a freelance life and he loved that. And to be able to convince him to come on board and see the journey that we're going to go on and the potential that we have was really exciting for us. And to have someone with Matt's experience being able to be there to help us and to guide us and to give us impact and to give us that sort of level of experience in the industry has been fantastic. And we've been really lucky with the team. I think Martin Eden, as well, and Chris Thompson.
I know Martin. Yeah,
and they were really excited to come on board. And that again kind of gave us that sort of like excitement about the project and what we were doing.
You've got a real caliber of folks there. I mean, Chris has a proven track record in what he does. And Martin, was at Titan for a long time, produced some really, really top of the range stuff. He's also been a self-publisher, so he knows about how to promote your own stuff and how to create a brand. I mean, you've got a really good team there. I'm incredibly impressed. So how did it come about that you got hold of Martin? did he approach you, or did you
Yeah,
approach
so
him, or-
Martin actually approched us,
Right.
and because he'd been seeing our social media stuff and following the artwork and this, you know, the character reveals and the story reveals and stuff. And you know, Trevor and Beth worked really, really hard to get that content to be as good as it is. And you're right there, Sammy.
Who?
Initially,
I thought it's just me coughing then.
initially,
I was going to say, is it catching?
It's COVID.
before you joined, and
Sorry,
of
it's not
course,
like I'm
Sammy
sat
knew.
here or anything, Dennis. It's fine.
But yeah, so he approached us because he was finishing his journey at Titan and loved what we were doing, and kind of sort of said, look, I'm going to do some freelance stuff, and if there's anything you need help with, and then, you know, getting to know Martin, he's such a lovely guy, and just very knowledgeable in what he does, you know, and the network that he's been able to open to us has just been insane. And the talent that he's been able to bring to the table is incredible. So yeah, really, really lucky to have this team. And then obviously Martin introduced us to Chris, and obviously you guys know that Chris is, you know, himself a bit of a titan in the industry, and again, the experience and the network and the knowledge that he brings to us is fantastic. So we, you know, whilst we were a young studio, I think we really are leaning on these incredible experienced people, and hopefully, you know, seeing them excited about the journey of what we're doing is for me really exciting, and you know, for the rest of the team as well, because it says that we're doing something right, and you know, hopefully, again, being one of the only like British studios out there, we really want to kind of make a name and a splash across the pond and globally, and obviously, you know, here in the UK as well. So, you know, having all these amazing people on board and being able to work with all these amazing people gives us the best chance to do that.
It definitely does, and you're quite wise in the way that you're appreciating the fact that these guys have this knowledge and you're leaning on it. That's the exact right thing to do, you know, because I've seen a lot of new publishers come in with that sort of aim, the same aim that you guys have, but they've been very much sort of like, we're going to do it our way, we know what we're doing, and they don't listen to any advice, and they go off and they disappear, you know. But what you guys are doing, you're benefiting from that experience, and I think it'll serve you really, really well. So I think we are able.
We finally did. Do you know what I had to do? I had to switch it on and off again. That's all I had to do. That's all I had to do.
Classic move.
So apologies if I wasn't totally concentrating. Obviously, this is one of the wonderful covers that we were sort of talking about in the preamble, and we'll get to that as we slowly go down. Obviously, congratulations in order that you've managed to smash your goal and added an extra $3,000 on it with half of the campaign still to go. That's quite amazing, really. And that's through word of mouth. That's through other forms of advertising, or is it just thrashing it out on podcasts, on doing promotion? What's the plan with what's left for the next 15 days?
So it's been a combination of everything, really. So we have been, you know, we've been going to Comic Cons for the last 6 to 8 months. And Sammy and her team there have been smashing out of the park, meeting people, talking to people, getting people on board. You know, our mailing list is 3,500 people in 6 months. That pretty much every one of them we've spoken to at Comic Con.
Yeah. You've been working hard then, Sammy. Yeah.
Yeah, and the people that we've met have been so engaging, and it's really nice to start talking about the story and see how quickly people get behind it. I think one of the things that makes us so different is the community that we've got around us as well, that the fans are so engaging with everything that we do. A lot of the feedback that we get, even if it's not good, it's mostly constructive. You know, 9 times out of 10 it's constructive.
That
and everyone seems to be really, everyone seems to be really passionate.
People don't give constructive criticism unless they care, you know.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, so that's a really good sign that they're taking the time to say, oh, why don't you do this? Or I'd like to see that. They're invested, you know, so that's a really good sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. And I think one of the things that Trevor and I were really passionate about when we started the company was that whilst it's about the book and whilst it's about, you know, the story and the IPs and stuff like that, we really wanted it to be about the community as well. And I think that's one of the more unique things about how we're set up. And in this day and age, I think, you know, you have to kind of engage with people on a genuine level. And, you know, we never want it just to be about buy our comic book. We wanted to kind of add value back to the community and inspire young writers and artists and people that, you know, dream about doing this incredible thing that we all get to work in and do. And that, you know, to prove that, you know, Trevor and I are just two kids who dreamt of making comic books one day, and, you know, here we are being able to do what we love, and, you know, wanting to be able to show to everybody else, like, well, first of all, come join our crazy journey, because we have no idea what the hell we're doing, but we're going to have fun doing it. And then, you know, join us and our amazing little family, and you know, be a part of that as well, you know, be a part of that journey. So we're really proud, and that's, you know, that's a huge part of, you know, a lot of our time and resources spent working with that community, and what Sammy does with, you know, on social media and in person, and Beth and Trevor, and all of us making the content, is, you know, part of what I think has been the success of Daughters of Albion so far in terms of the Kickstarter.
Yeah, it certainly separates you guys. I noticed from day one, you know, the way that you present yourselves, and, you know, the little videos that Sammy does, and your posts are always, you know, full of really interesting information. And you don't just talk about yourselves; you talk about other things that are happening in comics, and it's a really unique way of doing it, and it seems to be effective as well. So we're looking now at some of the artwork. I mean, we've got
this is probably my favorite section.
That's lovely.
The prints, right?
Yeah. So this kind of leads into exactly what Dennis was talking about. All these artists for our exclusive prints are all up and coming artists, so people that haven't worked in the industry before. But we've come across them on social media and sort of, I don't want to say give them the opportunity, because they deserve it anyway, but sort of give them like a platform to get that artwork out there. You know, they've all been paid fairly for their work, and they're part of a bigger project now that they perhaps haven't had a chance to be part of before. So this sort of really feeds into what Dennis talks about, with how important it is that we use our voice correctly, and we use our platform correctly, and we sort of build up that community with us.
Do you know what I like about the Hashani character, the main character in the book, particularly on the, you know, on the artwork we've seen? There's so many different styles of artwork, and yet already she's a very well designed, stand out there character. I imagine she would be recognizable as a silhouette, which is, of course, the litmus test for all iconic comic book characters. I really like her as a character. I'm wondering what you can tell her about her role in the story without giving too much away.
Yeah, great question. So Hashani is our main, I would say, one of our two main protagonists. And she, for me, was kind of like the person on the streets point of view. You know, like she's not a detective, she's not a, you know, superhero, she's not someone who has superpowers, but she, through her choices and through her decision making, I hope brings agency in terms of, like, you know, changing and impacting the story, impacting for the good, like, you know, what happens around her, and so for me, her role in the story was very much sort of like, well, actually, you can be just a normal person and have an effect on the world, and have effects on the people around you, and you know, and just looking after your family, being a good person, making moral decisions, is the things that make her a great person, great character. Not that she can shoot lasers from her eyes or fly or whatever.
Yeah, we kind of moved away from that in the world of comic books, haven't we? When I think of Lord of the Rings, the main characters of that are sort of, you know, a metaphor for the working class. The hobbits, you know, there's nothing special about them other than their big hairy feet. And yet they, spoiler alert, they save the day. So it's really interesting. You've got, you know, a quintessentially an ordinary street level character whose moral compass and the choices she makes is driving the story forward.
I think
absolutely.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I think that was really important for me, writing it, in terms of, like, again, I just, you know, these these superpowered beings that you have as protagonists, yeah, that's great. But to me, people like Superman was always the most boring, always the most uninteresting, because you can't. There's a lack of relatability to their power sets, and the fact that, you know, the great writers managed to get them into danger and take them out of danger and you know, put that into them. But I wanted people to be able to sort of see a part of themselves, and Hashani's registered incredibly well at Comic-Cons, and when people see her on the cover of a comic book, the reactions that we've had have just been quite emotional and quite amazing.
Well, she'll
That's
make
nice.
a good cosplay character one day, I reckon, with that green
Yeah, we've
streak
got a
in
few
her hair.
people interested already in cosplaying.
Oh, brilliant.
That's when you know
Yeah.
you've made it.
Exactly,
Yeah.
that'll be the dream.
When people start
Absolutely.
cosplaying your character, definitely. I mean, going back, Dennis, to what you were talking about, actually, I mean, you're talking about her resonating. I mean, what you're saying about a character who, you know, their bravery, if you like, is standing up and making a difference on their own in the world and making decisions that other people might not make, where she hasn't got the superpowers to back her up. And I think that resonates with a lot of people in these times. I think at the moment, a lot of people feel that they don't have control over their lives, that there's the world around them, you know, is almost out of touch with reality. And I think that, you know, when you have a character like that who shows that you can make a difference on your own as an individual, that can be really powerful, especially a young character, you know, who may be a street level character like this, who represents a lot of different people. You know, she's obviously representative of lots of different groups, isn't she?
Yeah, very much so. And look, you know, obviously, you know, characters that, you know, you grow up loving, like Batman and Iron Man and people like that, who are billionaires, and they you know, their superpower is they're rich and super intelligent and super smart. That's great. And I think that's, you know, there's definitely a place for that, obviously, because they're very successful characters. Personally, I wanted to see someone that I could relate to, or that, you know, that people that I grew up with can relate to. And it's, you know, I think there is a strength and a real sort of like interesting element, if that can be drawn out, to be that thing. Because yes, superheroes to a certain extent should be aspirational, and you know, I think that's why, you know, and escapism, and I think that's why obviously you know, the MCU's done so well, and DCU not so much, but it's there. There's you know, there's that aspirational element to it to a certain extent, but for me, seeing street level people, and again, it's this seeing my London is the most important thing. Every time you see London sort of represented in media, it's a very distinct sort of like level of London, which is sort of like, you know, perhaps higher.
It's a stereotype, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Whenever you see London, especially in an American movie, it's a complete stereotype of what they think London is. And that was always the case in the comics as well. I mean, Ollie will agree with me here because he's an old-time comics reader as well. And I'm sure you guys agree. You know, you remember the old Marvel comics, you know, the guys, whenever they went to London for a day, you know, everyone was saying bloody hell. Everyone was wearing an old peak cap, you know, and we're still gaslit streets. And I mean, it's not too bad now, you know, they're not as bad now.
I've still seen some pretty bad ones. But I must admit, the London that I think has really got it correctly is the Magic Order, Mark Miller. And he must have sent loads of references over to his predominantly American artist, Stuart Immerman. And I've never seen London look so good without having to fall into the tropes of there's the houses of Westminster, there's the London Eye. You've still got that, but it's a London that feels a lot more realistic. And I dare say, Dennis, in the pages we'll look at later, we'll get that feeling as well. Certainly I got that feeling when I looked at it, that you're in a living, breathing city without having to constantly, every other panel, show the Shard, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, when we were working with Matt, so Matt's not London based. He does come down fairly regularly to come to the office, but Matt's not London based. So I think we worked really closely with him. And for us, it was really important to get that sense of like, actually, it feels like London. You know, every time you open the page and turn the page, you're stepping into London, and you're stepping into, and that's not just the artwork, but that's you know, the writing and the dialogue and the people that we're meeting, and you know, it shouldn't feel like, you know, you transpose some people from New York to and just, you know, put them in London or what have you. So I hope, you know, that we've hit it to a certain extent as much as possible, because that was something that was really important to us, and again, as a part of our brand identity, being that London-based studio, you know, if we couldn't get that right, then it was, you know, that's not a great sign.
I think this is a good example. You've got, because of the dark night scene, it's rather abstract. You can just about make out the tower, the London, famous London Bridge, Tower Bridge, but the rest of it, it's a big city. It's not signposting. This is London. It's very subtly done. I feel very nice piece of artwork as well.
That makes it timeless then as well, doesn't it? You know, because I mean, this is a sort of story that could have a sort of timeless quality to it. You know, if you have a really strong character in a city like London, it's something that could have quite a long shelf life, I think. I mean, these are lovely panels here. So this is Matt's art we're looking at now, isn't it, guys? Yeah.
So this is Matt's artwork. Matt's doing the first issue. He's just incredible. I mean, you know, when I came across his artwork and his portfolios, I just really, it reminded me a little bit of Dave McKean. And you know, I think Matt has mentioned that he's obviously a big influence as well. But these nearly painted panels, basically, every panel is almost like a piece of artwork in itself. And we've been, you know, obviously over the last few years, we've been sort of like, and particularly over the last 6 months and 12 months, you know, we've been looking at a lot of comic books, which are fantastic and you know, great books in their own right. But then we look at Matt's artwork and we're just spoiled, we're just blown away. So yeah, like, again, you know, I think that really adds to it, the detail, the level of detail that Matt puts into it. And you know, again, the characters and the expressions and
I really like his color palette as well.
I just love the way you can see the buildings in the background, but without the solid outline. It really gives you that sense of foreground and background.
Yeah, good. It's really good at catching the depth.
It's amazing. And again, another panel there with the copper behind him. It's just here. What you've got is a very polished, professional level artist already.
And it's great storytelling. It's great storytelling as well from panel to panel.
It really is.
Yeah. It's really
good. And I take it with a name like Daughters of Albion, we're looking at something that's both science fiction and something that's fantasy as well.
Yes, exactly. And I think, again, it was really interesting when we were talking through the look of the book and you know, we were kind of like, very much, it's dystopian, but dystopias happen during daylight as well. You know, and we were very, very conscious not to pull it into that sort of like constant rain and darkness that you have in something amazing like Blade Runner. But realistically, it's just a kind of, you know, again, it's like, well, yeah, I mean, look around you over the last few years. It's, you know, and it's interesting what you say about it being timeless, change, just because, again, this was a question that we talked about a lot, and we were like, how many years in the future do we want to put this? Do we want to put it into the future? Do we want it? And my idea was that I wanted the reader to be able to kind of like put their own thing into that, whether or not they felt that it was in the future or whether or not I felt that it's today. So a lot of the tech you see is slightly more advanced version of stuff that we've got already.
Yeah.
You know, we've got the drones, we've got the unmanned drones, we've got the you know, the robo dogs that they're developing for the military.
Yeah. They've been developed a while, haven't they?
Yeah, they've been. I mean, you know, it's been terrifying watching the development of them, but fascinating also. And you know, it's only a matter of time when we're kind of thinking, okay, would they be used in a civilian situation? You know,
if the Tories stay in power, yes.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly. And we've had quite a few comments when we're talking about dystopias, and people have just been saying, "So you mean like today?"
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, pretty much.
Well, that's why it resonates, isn't it? Because yes, you put it in a different world, but it's still a lot of these themes that it seems like you're approaching they're very real. This isn't an abstract story. This is something that will resonate with people. Would you say that?
Yeah,
sure,
we
it
hope
definitely
so.
has.
Sorry, Sammy, go on.
I was just going to say, it definitely has with the people that we've spoken to so far. So trying to sort of explain the story quick enough to stop people as they're walking past in conventions and give these snippets online. It's quite difficult when we've got so many elements of the story to bring together. So yeah, we've got this dystopian sort of futuristic, but we're also pulling in sort of old English and British myths and legends. We've got the fantasy element in terms of some of the characters and the classes of people that we have in the story, but then we've also got this crime and murder aspect as well. So there's all these different genres being pulled together to create this world, and yet it's still so relatable to people. The stories that we tell them about the victims and things that are happening are things that do happen in our world, unfortunately, but they're sort of dressed up in a way that's easier to digest until you're ready to look deeper into the story.
Yeah, I like that.
Now, you mentioned myths and legends. I mean, we're talking clearly Celtic British legends with a title like Daughters of Albion. What actually does the title of the comic relate to, and who other than the main female protagonist might it relate to as the story progresses? Again, without giving too much away, of course.
Yeah,
what's the elevator
you have to watch
pitch,
Ollie,
Sammy?
guys. He tries to get stuff out of you. He's very
trying to get a scoop every time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's. I mean, it's really interesting. As we were developing the idea, so we went on some tours of Myths and Legends of London, and some really fascinating stuff about the old kings and Geoffrey of Monmouth and the history that he believed of London, and the King Arthur and being a sort of like legitimate king, and Albion obviously is an ancient name for Britain, often related with sort of myth and legend and magic, and it's been used in many different other IPs and stories, and it's harking back to kind of this concept that Albion has been there for thousands and thousands of years, and actually there's a lot of women in this story that it relates to, and these are all daughters of Albion, and what happens to them and how people treat them and how they react and how they have taken how they have conducted themselves, and where they've got to in their lives and their sort of like whatever it may be. So it relates to all of these, and hopefully by the end of the first volume, by the end of the second volume, you'll kind of see that how these daughters of Albion, our daughters of Albion, daughters of some of the characters in the book, and equally some mythical and legendary characters that may or may not have been around for a really long time in Albion.
You just try not to give stuff away here, right?
No, it's very hard.
Be very careful with your words.
Anyway. So I think hopefully it's kind of like, it's about all these different characters, and they may, they're not necessarily related, they don't necessarily know each other, but somehow they impact and they change this story, and they have agency in this story, and what happens to them and what happens to them really drives a lot of the dynamics of where we end up.
Cool. I think that was a pretty good answer, actually, Ollie.
That was a very well-rounded answer, which was, it gave me enough details to make me think, I wonder, because obviously I'm quite familiar with Geoffrey of Monmouth myself, but I'd be very keen to see. I'm trying to find the piece of artwork that you shared that had. I'm going back into Dropbox. I thought I downloaded it all. There was a particular piece of artwork. I'm going to try and find it. And whilst I do, I think I'll ask you a completely different question, Dennis. Because this has done so successfully well, how has maybe your thought pattern, both of you, changed with what you're going to be able to do in both the short term and the long term. Are you going to follow the Kickstarter model, or are you going to use that as a springboard onto sort of self-publishing in other formats?
So yeah, I mean, I think we'll always do a combination of both, and I think so. What we're really conscious of is that, you know, we as a 21st century studio that is kind of, you know, come up through in the last year and in the tumultuous times that we've had recently, is that we want to be really agile in terms of what we do, and you know, if that means that we are you know, we're doing Kickstarters. The plan is to do Kickstarters quite a lot, not just because obviously we want to crowdfund, but equally it's a wonderful platform for people to come and find new independent comic books.
It's great for building your community, isn't it?
It's great for building the community, and it's great for kind of getting a sense of like how people, you know, how much people are interested in the materials. But we're also doing very traditional in terms of hopefully distributing to comic book stores, and, you know, looking at things like Comixology and digital distribution, but equally we will have a website that we sign off that we sell from, so direct to consumer as well. So yeah, my background before Wild River Comics was e-commerce. And, you know, I believe that we're basically, you know, we're buying everything online nowadays. And during lockdown and during the times where people sort of like couldn't go out, it's changed a lot of people's ideas and mentality in terms of like how and where to find comic books and how and where to find this sort of like content and material. Yeah. So I think we want to explore that space and sort of see how that does and see how that works. And thankfully, you know, we are small enough and agile enough and young enough to be able to do that.
And do you see that? I guess this is a question for Sammy. Do you think that the conventions will always play a big part in your sales and your marketing and your community building?
Absolutely, yeah. I think I'm very proud of what we've accomplished with our first Kickstarter, but we're not naive enough to think that we could make this on every Kickstarter we do. We know it's sort of an initial boost and an initial, you know, wow, everyone's been waiting so long for this. So we know that the most important thing is that we have a strong community and a strong story and a strong presence, so that continually we can publish these books and continue to advance the story and get it out there in different ways. For me, I think it was proven when we launched the Kickstarter that the best thing that we've done is our presence at these conventions, because we could see a lot of the names coming through with the names from the newsletter sign-ups with people that we had spoken to. You know, there's a direct correlation between not only how many people were buying, but how much they were spending as well. So the people that we've engaged with and we've built a relationship with, of course, people buy people. So they're the ones that have invested the most in the comic, and they're where we've seen the most of our sales from. So I think if all else fails and we're literally counting the pennies, it'll still be the conventions that we're at. Yeah, it's been amazing for the community, for the book, and for the feedback element as well. So I think it's definitely our strongest tool.
British conventions are certainly a great place for supporting the indie comic scene. I know, so when I first started looking at the MCM comic conventions, I think a lot of professionals weren't too sure about where they stood, because it seemed to be a lot of TV and film stars. But as a result of that, it really, really seemed to nourish a lot of indie comic creators who've gone on to bigger and better things as a result of that. So I think, yeah, continuing bashing away at those conventions and it's a great way to meet up with your fan base, isn't it? And that community. For sure. And build. I think there's still, even though we're talking through sort of IT, word of mouth is still a great way of catching that thunder in a bottle, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it's not just been sort of customers that we've met. We've built friendships with these people that we've met. We've got people on the team now building cosplays for us that we met at the conventions. You know, they happen to walk past and be wearing something that was reminiscent of our characters. So we've got an amazing person called Aries on Instagram who's now creating the jacket for us for Hishani, to, you know, for cosplays for future conventions. It's just been, you know, unbelievable. We met, what was it, Dennis Bleeding Cool, that we met at the convention, and they were like, straight away, we're going to write something about you.
Yeah, that's a huge reach.
It was. We've met.
He's a really good supporter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rich is a
And
good,
just the
good
knowledge
guy.
has been invaluable, let alone them being willing to run a story on us as well. So yeah, I think without a doubt the conventions are the way forward and have been our most beneficial tool so far.
And will you be going maybe to Thought Bubble, which is I suppose it's the jewel in the crown of comic conventions
Well,
in the
you would
UK?
think, but it turns out that convention's for losers and we're not losers, so they won't let us go.
No, you didn't get
I
a
know
table.
it's very popular, so I wouldn't let that put you off going,
No.
or you could just turn up in cosplay and give comics
turn
away
up,
anyway.
yeah.
There's always
Craft
ways
party.
around it.
Yeah.
So the problem was, unfortunately, we didn't have a comic book at the time of the application, so we could show them everything that we'd done, but we had nothing to sell, nothing to promote. So unfortunately, we didn't make Thought Bubble this year. But at this point, we haven't met Thought Bubble this year, but we're still trying. We're still in conversations with the people that run it. If not this year, if we don't manage to wrangle it for this year, we'll be there next year for sure.
I'm sure they'll be asking you to come next year.
They'll be begging us.
Yeah.
They will not be able to believe that they couldn't fit us in this year.
And from a publishing point of view, is it going to be individual stories based around what creators bring to you, or are you going for a shared universe kind of feel to all the things you're going to do?
So yeah, basically, Trevor would kill me if I didn't mention the Albion verse. So
I'm going to ask the question then.
yeah. So basically, what initially when we started the studio, it was unclear in what direction we were going to go in,
Right.
And so whether or not we develop individual IPs, not related to each other, and have creators come on board and do their IPs as well, but the Daughters of Albion universe and the London side of things, the dystopian side of things, has registered so well with a lot of people, and a lot of people are kind of sort of saying that they feel it's quite unique and there's not a huge amount out there that's very similar to it. So if we can own that space, then I think there's something that's really, really exciting that we can create within that. So this year we've got obviously Daughters of Albion, which is going to be 4-issue runs before the trade back and collection, and then we've got hopefully 10 other titles that are coming out as well that we're kind of like all based in the same universe, but different aspects of it that would spin off from characters and from organizations that you meet in Daughters of Albion. And for instance, we've got one of our really popular characters is B, who is Hashani's little sidekick, and so we're going to be doing an all ages book for B, because I think that would be really fascinating and really interesting for people and fun. And then other organizations that you'll meet along the way, other characters that you'll meet along the way, and we kind of try to cover the bases in terms of genres. So espionage, Indiana Jones-esque type of thing, and the long-term dream of the studio is to kind of bring these IPs to live action and to other media. So if we kind of like have this shared universe, this Albion verse that people, even if you might not like Daughters of Albion, but you might love our sort of like called the Royal Society for the Containment of Supernatural Artifacts, and that's kind of our Indiana Jones-esque chasing around the world, artifacts and stuff. So hopefully, we're building something that there's a little bit of everything a little bit of something for everyone, and then all feeding back into, well, if you like that, then you'll probably like Daughters of Albion, cool. And that's our aim, that's our target this year.
And so, as well as the main story in the 4 issues, are we to keep an eye out certain characters almost springboarding into their own series, as well as completely new characters being introduced in series down the line?
Exactly. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. And I think what we'd like to do is have, even if it's a completely new book with different characters or brand new characters, that you see a recurrence of other characters that might not be necessarily key to the actual storyline, but you'll have that familiarity, and to reward the reader for being to being immersed in the universe and knowing that. And it kind of like, obviously, a bit of fan service, bit of sort of like Easter eggs. There's in one of the volumes that we're developing with another writer, there'll be a little nod back to something in Daughters of Albion, for instance. And if you're sort of eagle-eyed, or if you kind of know about it, you'll be able to go back to Daughters of Albion issue 2 and be like, that's what that is, And I love
that stuff. Fans love that stuff.
Yeah, I love that
Yeah.
as a part of the medium, and one of the unique things of the medium is that you can place something in a panel that's like 4 issues down the line,
Yeah.
and then people will sort of like eventually people will go back to it and recognize things, and
It's what
like,
us nerds feed off.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
exactly.
keeps us
I'm a
going.
nerd feeder. Yeah.
Nerd feeder. And I wanted to ask earlier on. I mentioned it, and then I haven't asked, so I'll ask now. These books, are they predominantly all ages, or are you doing a mixture in that regard?
So we're doing mixture. I mean, I think Daughters of Albion, I kind of like, I would say sort of like PG-13, 15 plus. There's a little bit of sort of like violence in there. Yeah,
Right.
a little bit of sort of like sinister elements. But we'll be doing a range across all the sort of like the different stories, and we'll be making decisions as well, like the age groups and the age ranges. Like I said, the B one, which I'm really excited for as well, because I think there can be some fantastic stories around her character, and that's going to be at all ages. But yeah, I think we'll want to cater to a lot of different demographics and different readers. And one of the things that Trevor and I have always sort of said is that we love readers that are not necessarily into comic books or have never considered comic books to be able to pick up one of our books and say they've really enjoyed it. And actually, some of my friends that have never read comic books before, and I was super nervous to give them the book, and they read it and they really enjoyed it, and they actually, enjoyed the art form. And it was really interesting for me to get feedback from them. They were sort of saying it took me 30 minutes to read the entire thing, because like
working out how to read a comic for the first time,
and then reading it. Yeah, so it's really fascinating to I love the idea to be able to introduce something that I love, the art form that we love, as to new people, and for them to be able to take it on as a viable sort of like media, because it is incredible and it's very unique in what you can do.
You're preaching to the choir, mate. You're preaching to the choir.
What's the publishing plan for these 4 issues then? How, obviously, because each campaign takes a certain amount of time, then you've got to do the fulfillment. Are they going to come out quarterly over the next year, keep the fans hungry for more, or are you going to try and speed up the process?
Yeah, one of the things that I can hand on heart say has been one of the biggest learning curves in the last 6 to 12 months has been sort of like, scheduling, time frames, figuring out how fast things take, and again, as a team that has never worked together before, and hasn't necessarily, I'd never written a comic book before. I'd written scripts and what have you in prose, and Beanie had never written a comic book before, but she'd written prose. Trying then to work with Matt, who'd never worked with us before, was really interesting. And yeah, there's a lot of learnings. We'd like to make them as regular as possible. I think as an independent comic book studio as we are, we're probably not going to be getting to a stage where it's monthly anytime soon. But yeah, as regularly as possible. We're aiming for most of these to be at least 2 months. So
if you can keep to it, that's the main thing. I mean, I say this to every new publisher, it's like, it doesn't matter what your schedule is, as long as you keep to it. So if you say it's every 2 months, that's fine. If you say it's every 4 months, as long as you keep to it, people tend to understand, that you might you need to put stuff out a little bit slower than a massive publisher, so
absolutely.
You can do that, especially if you're using the Kickstarter model, because it's not really possible to do a monthly book on the Kickstarter model.
Absolutely.
And
we'll have the other stories coming out in the meantime as well. So if we get Daughters of Albion every sort of 3 months, we'll have other titles coming out that relate to the story, but also completely separate stories as well, to hopefully keep that momentum going.
That's a good way of doing it, isn't it?
It's really exciting, guys. It really is. It's very exciting to see a UK publisher, a new UK publisher, doing stuff like this. And
hold on, Shane. We'd be very silly if we didn't ask about what sort of rewards. We've rushed through all of the artwork. What kind of rewards what rewards are still on offer with 15 days to go? I dare say maybe some of the smaller rewards, the limited rewards, may have already been snatched up. But what kind of pledge points can can people still back, and what will they get for that money?
You know, weirdly, it was the bigger ones that went quickly. The collector's package and the superfan package, sort of 50 to £100 tiers, they went really quickly. They had things like personalized thank you videos in them, exclusive versions of prints, a little USB that had like a couple of little videos and extra content and stuff on there. And they just flew within the first sort of, 12 hours, Dennis? They just went. So we had to add more on, really. So there's a couple of those left now. We've kind of left quite a lot of spaces available for the basic tier, so the digital and the copy of the comic on its own with an exclusive print, the sort of lower level. Just try and make this book as accessible to as many people as possible. And then the bigger tiers we've limited a little bit, but we've, like I say, we've ended up having to put more in because we just didn't expect them to go as quickly as they did.
No, you've done well there actually to get those bigger tiers moving. That's a really, really good sign. That shows that people are really, really interested.
Yeah, and I think they just buy the art as well. Like you said, the art is so different. Every print, every cover is so different. And I think because it's based in London as well, a lot of the prints feature parts of London in the background. So even if you don't know too much about the comic book, the artwork's enjoyable on its own. So the packages that we've done that you get all the exclusive prints and things like that, they just flew straight away, which, you know, it speaks wonders and volumes for the artists that we've got on board. It really does.
So I'm looking at the pledge for £15, for example. You get. I hope I'm getting this person's name right. Young and Yoon's Kickstarter exclusive cover. That's my favourite cover, I must admit.
Yeah, mine too.
So you get the physical issue plus the cover. You've got the standard issue. So you've also got the digital art prints that we saw earlier. You've got a digital wallpaper. I mean, that even for Kickstarter, value. I think that's pretty. Two comics plus the digital stuff.
Very good
15
value.
quid. That's pretty good. I just hope you're left with some money after all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, we were really conscious, and Trevor really pushed to make sure that, you know, it was like, again, it's that premise of adding value to people, and you know, value is not how much you spend on it, but you know how much you appreciate it and what you get back from it. And so for us, it was really about sort of like, okay, if people are backing us, if people are spending this sort of money, it needs to be a celebration of that, and it needs to be a huge thank you for that, and that they're getting loads of good stuff that they're happy with.
I mean, that super fan.
This is for 100 quid.
It's £100, but look at what you get. I mean, there's signed script, exclusive sketch cover. I mean, that alone, from some artists, people would pay £100.
I like the idea of an exclusive commentary video. I don't think I've seen that before.
Yeah, so we tried to film that the other day and it ended up being over an hour long.
Oh God!
So I think there's going to be some editing, but it was fun to do. And you know, I learned so much about the comic book, even though obviously I've been involved in the story and everything for months now. Sitting down with Matt and running through the commentary, there's so many little Easter eggs in there that I never would have picked up on. That, you know, if people do come across them, it's just going to blow their little mind. So it's really, really fun to have that video there and hear all these sort of insights, how the characters have changed since they first got introduced to the comic. You know, how the concepts have changed, how the world's changed. It was really fun to be part of, and I think it will be really, really special for people to watch as well.
That's cool. I mean, that's such a good idea. I'm probably going to steal it, to be honest. It's a fantastic idea.
One of the things that I love, as you know, as a fan, is always being like, especially with film and you know, television, it's like hearing about the things behind the scenes and how these things made, and how these decisions got made, and you know, and that to me sort of like just adds to kind of my enjoyment of the media, and it's not something that you obviously you would typically see with comic books, but then, you know, like historically it's probably not been you know, it's not really been viable for a lot of, you know, there will be, I'm sure there's documentaries on YouTube and stuff like that about how Watchmen came together or something like that, or you know, and reading sort of like stuff from Alan Moore and people, you know, creators from behind the scenes talking about their process and talking about what, you know, how they come up with stuff is always really fascinating for me. And again, it's kind of it's giving back beyond, you know, not being somewhat precious about us being creators, and giving back to people that want to learn how to do things, and and not saying that we're experts in anything, but literally sort of saying this is how we did it, and these are the struggles that we came up with, and this is funny because this happened, and so we wanted to. I think it's fantastic content, and hopefully people will really enjoy it and get a little bit more out of it, and then make the hopefully they'll be going back to the pages that Matt has drawn and be like, yeah, cool, interesting.
Just gives it another level, doesn't it?
Gives
a whole new level to the enjoyment.
Makes it so much more immersive.
Definitely, I totally agree. And I see that there's a launch party as part of the Kickstarter as well. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
I don't think we thought that one through before we were like, yeah, let's just invite everyone.
Special London prices, bloody hell.
I know, but it'll make wonderful content, and that's all that matters.
Yeah.
So you can have people video pissed out of their heads reading comics. Is that the idea?
No, just me. In fact, it's always me and Dennis that end up.
Content on it already, like honestly. But yeah, no, it's one of those things that we love to do and celebrate with all the creators that we've worked with, all the people that have contributed to this, the people that we've met along the way, that we've networked with and made friends with, that have supported us, and then obviously the fans. And again, it is for us. It's about this accessibility, isn't it? It's about if you genuinely want to feel a part of something, and if you genuinely love something, and you've been with us for a really long time in terms of the journey, then let's celebrate that. And it's just a celebration of the last year, basically.
Yeah,
no, it's a good idea. I really like that. We've had a comment from Gary. He says,
Gary.
Shortens to DOA, Dead on Arrival, relevant to the story.
Daughters of Albion he's referring to, isn't he? Yeah, or maybe he's reading too much into it.
I think he might be. Yeah. No answer to that one.
Gary, I don't really know what to say about that.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
Dead on Arrival. Well, thankfully it hasn't been Dead on Arrival. Gary was our first backer. So amazing. Thank you so much for that, Gary. And yeah,
he's looking for conspiracies where there's no conspiracies.
Well, feel free to create.
Yeah. See, this is the thing. People are already getting involved in that way, coming up with their own ideas about what the story might entail.
Yeah.
It's always a good sign. It really is. So we've gone over our hour, only a little bit, actually.
We'll turn into pumpkins now.
We've done quite well. We're already pumpkins, Ollie. Haven't you noticed? So I'd like to say, Sammy and Dennis, thank you so much for coming onto the show and talking about the book. It's been a real eye-opener. I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
Great to see the artwork as well.
It has.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been really fun. We've really looked forward to this all week. So thank you for finding time for us.
Well, thank you for finding time for us as well, you two. You're probably busy enough being in that there London.
It never stops. There is no rush hour in London. It's just constant.
Rather you than me, I must admit.
Yeah, I'm too old for all that now.
I'm too old for this shit.
Yeah, I would say 3 or 4 days a week. That's what the guys hear from me. I get off the underground and I'm like, never again.
Okay, guys. Well, thank you ever so much again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kickstarter. You've already done it.
Very much, guys.
You've done a great job. No problem at all. See you again soon. Have a great
evening.
Thank
you for having us.
Conventions as well.
Yes, hopefully. See you at ICE.
That would be great. That would be great to see you at ICE. Fantastic. Lovely. See you there.
See you there. Have a good night.
Bye. No, I'm trying to get this.
Oh, shake on.